It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. For those of you who are just tuning in, we are at one of my favorite times of year. This is the nonprofit series. Every year, this is our 6th year doing it. So this is our every year number 6, that from Thanksgiving through New Year's, we highlight organizations in the nonprofit space. You say, okay, Ivy, why? Say, you know what? This is a personal thing for me. Complete disclosure, personal thing for me. The holidays are about giving and receiving. The more we could learn about how we can give, and that could be from the financial basis, it could be from showing up, it could be from participation. But when we learn how we can give, we can kick off the following year stepping into the right foot. And I am thrilled to introduce you to today, Pam Hawn, who's the Executive Director of Hope for Community. Pam is a wife and mom with a huge heart for community. We were actually, Pam and I speak about the heart a whole bunch of times when we connect. Right? And Pam can tell you more about that. Through Pam's life, she had served with many outreach geared towards the homeless growing up in New York. She develops Pam's heart at an early age for the hurting and the lost. Since moving to Florida in 1981, her passion grew to help those with less. She's continued and has continued being involved with organizations and shared her passion for the homeless. In 2009, when the economy was sluggish, Pam and her husband, Mark, recognized that there was going to be some challenge in the lifestyle. God laid her a plan to remain focused, even as it was getting harder for herself and her husband and their own children. In 2009, Day of Hope was birthed. Pam, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to say, I want to hear your story, how this truly began. And first, thank you for showing up with the heart you do and giving hope to so many you touch. So Pam, thanks and welcome for being here with me to end Her Success Story.
Thank you, Ivy, and thank you for this privilege. This is amazing. I'm so glad to be part of this. So Hope for Communities was birthed in 2009, as you shared. I, as a middle schooler up in New York from the age of 13 on, have always served the homeless community, but it was always a man and woman on the street. So when my family moved down here to Florida, got away from ministry for a little bit, reconnected back and sought out a church that was serving the homeless. At that time, we were doing the clothes closet, the food pantry, and I had asked the pastor about a Thanksgiving, and that led to this big Thanksgiving outreach meal that we did for 3 years. But it was 2006, 7, and 8. And if you remember those years, the economy was changing. It was declining, and the face of homelessness was changing. It was no longer the man and woman on the street. It also involved families. With that, my husband and I had a family-based business, and because of the decline of the economy, we lost that family business. And I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 children, and it was all of a sudden getting tight to do things for our kids, and back to school was coming up, and I was having anxiety of how was I going to get my 3 kids ready for back to school when the business was no longer there that provided so well for us. And for those who have prepared a child for back to school, it's not only time commitment but a financial commitment. The third thing that was
hold on, I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah,
being a mom, having kids getting ready for back to school back in the day, it is a big financial commitment. And I'm going to say, you know what? 07, 08, and 09 were really difficult for my husband and I. Really, really difficult. And those times were challenging. You know, for those listeners who lived through that with Pam and I, there's a strong memory there. And for those who didn't, I hope you don't have that experience. But getting ready, your kids ready for back to school, it's not just going to the doctor and buying some clothes. It's so much more.
It is. And even today, the school list, the supply list that the kids have to show up the first day of school with has tripled from, when I was getting my kids ready for back to school. And there are families that have never recovered from that. And now, post COVID going through that and families still struggling. So we were doing a Bible study and I felt like God said, if you're feeling anxious for how you're going to get your 3 kids ready for back to school, how do you think the moms and dads that you serve at the clothes closet and the food pantry and Thanksgiving, how do you think they're feeling? And it was a very humbling moment because my kids had a roof over their head, they had clothes on their body and good food to eat, and realizing that so many were going without even those basics. So I just felt like God was prompting me that while I was getting my 3 kids ready for school, I was to get the homeless community ready for back to school, which I thought was humorous at the time because I'm like, God, you're getting the anxiety piece of getting 3 kids ready. And now you're asking me to get what in my feeble mind I thought was just a couple hundred kids ready. Little did I know at the time there were about 1,600 kids classified as homeless. So I argued with God a little bit because I'm like, it's 7 weeks till the first day of school. This is a great idea. His ideas are always
it was a great idea if we started this 7 months ago. Hello.
Exactly.
We talked about the timing of this.
Exactly.
What this actually entails.
Can we just table this for next year? And if you've ever had an argument with God, you lose because he's like, but the kids need it this year. So I went to my home church pastor and I said, I this is an idea God laid on my heart. I have no idea what it's going to look like or how to do it, but I'm trusting, but I know I need a host site. And he opened the doors for our church to do it. And that first year we had 200 volunteers and served 200 children with everything they needed to be ready for the first day of school.
So in 7 weeks, you figured out how to serve 200 children.
Yeah.
Not bad, Pam. Not bad for a start.
It was a little crazy. I was just like every morning in my quiet time, I just had a legal pad and a pencil. And I'm like, okay, God, this is your project, not mine. I have no idea what I'm doing. Tell me what to do. And I felt like the first thing was, what do you do for your own children? So I just started making a list of everything I do for my own kids. I bring them for their back to school physical. So I needed doctors and nurses and medical supplies and exam rooms. I bring them to the dentist to get their teeth cleaned. So I need dental professionals and dental supplies and dental rooms. And the list went on: haircut, clothes, shoes, backpacks, school supplies, you name it. It was just this ongoing list. So that's kind of how it started. And what it turned into the day of was amazing, and had no idea it was going to be like that. My pastor and I stood at the front door and he looked at me and he said, did you have any idea? And I'm like, no, none, like no idea at all. Yeah, so those were those early years. And then we wanted to serve more kids the second year. And my pastor said, that's fine, we can serve more kids, but at some point we're going to max out. So how do we make this larger? How do we serve more?
And it's interesting you say that because, we talk a lot about on Her Success Story, how do you scale a business? How do you scale, a lot of work I do. And I recognize it's okay. Okay, great. We were able to do 200. Yes, we can go bigger, but when we go bigger, what happens next? Like, you can't just look at like that next 1 year. You got to say, okay, what's going to happen in 3 and 5 and how do we manage that? And if you start figuring it out early, you're smart.
Yeah, well, that second year we did it, we invited other churches to come see what we were doing because we thought if they could actually see it and experience it, they might want to take it back to their church. And that's basically what happened. And from there, it kind of became like the Herbal Essence commercial, right? You tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends.
So I remember that commercial.
Yeah. So this past summer, we had 15 locations with another dozen partnering churches, a few sponsoring churches, and we served about 2,800 kids.
Beautiful. So walk me through a little bit about everything from the child and the parent perspective, because it has to be so emotional for them. I mean, I could think as a mom going through that and having somebody who is going to take care of and help me with, I'm having an emotional reaction now, just thinking about that.
Yeah. For the parents and the children, I mean, the children absolutely love it. They love it. I think for them, it's the reassurance that their child is going to begin the first day of school on an even playing field. So they show up to school with everything the kid who has everything shows up with. They're not showing up with that hand-me-down backpack, those torn sneakers, not having the right supplies, but they're coming completely prepared. And the best is like the first day of school, I love lunchtime because I get calls from the principals. And, I remember this first call I got, and this principal was like, Pam, little Johnny, who used to come to the front door, walking slowly, hands in pocket, looking down, didn't want to be there because he was embarrassed, is now running to the front doors with excitement because he has a fresh haircut and he has new clothes and new shoes and a new backpack and all the needed school supplies. So it's really about building into their self-esteem, right? It's like you and I, Ivy, if we're going to go to a business meeting or something, we're going to dress for success, right? So it's a matter of those first impressions. And we really believe that if the kids can feel good about their first impression, then they're going to want to be at school. They're not going to pretend to be sick or cut classes. And if they're at school, if attendance is better, grades are better. If grades are better, graduation rate is better. And if graduation rate is better, we have a generation coming up behind us that's going to have your job and my job. And we need to pour into them now. For the parents, it's peace. Peace is a word that I hear all the time, is that you've just given me peace. In one day, in 2.5 hours, they have all their kids completely ready at no cost to them.
So on a how are you reaching, and how are the families finding out where how is this network built?
Sure. So we recruit churches is the first step. From there, the church partners with their local school. We try to keep it demographically close for reasons that we want the families to start participating in the church activities. And then the guidance counselor is a referral. So we don't do any screening as an organization. The church doesn't do any of the screening. The guidance counselor, they all know who their homeless kids are, but also who the kids are that are one paycheck away from homelessness, because we want to be on the preventive side as much as we can as well. So the referrals come strictly from the guidance counselors. We also have about a handful of organizations in our community that deal strictly with homeless children, especially there's the McKinney Act in the United States that says every county must have a liaison between the homeless community and the school system. So we work with them, because if we don't have that child's school sponsored yet and they're classified as homeless, we want to make sure we at least serve that child. We may not be able to sponsor that whole school right now, but we're going to make sure we can serve that child at an event.
So you have brought together layers. What does your team and staff look like to pull this off? I mean, you're serving, I mean, on a business level, you're serving several thousand, right, annually. So you're fundraising, you're coordinating. So what does Hope for Community as an organization look like? How have you built that?
So for the first 9-10 years, we were 100% volunteer. I actually worked a full-time job. 1 year I was working 84 hours a week at a job outside of doing this. But I'm now the full-time paid executive director. I'm the only full-time employee. I have 2 part-time people. I have an assistant for 5 hours a week, and I have a director of marketing and development for 5 hours a week. But both of them can accomplish in 5 hours what it takes an average person to do in 20 hours. So I'm thankful for both of them. But we have an army of volunteers. We have close to 5,000 volunteers across the 2 counties. Wow. And they're in different layers. So some of the volunteers are strictly for Hope for Communities, where I have like a liaison for every professional area that we do, like medical, dental, hair, photography, etc. But then at the church level,
hold on, because I also want to let everybody know, because this is so important for a kid and the parents. You also do their school photo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. We bring in professional photographers, and they do their back to school picture as well as a family portrait. We learned early on that many of our families have never had a family portrait done before. So, we want to provide that for the kids. And the back to school pictures at the schools are pretty expensive, the package for our families. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Okay, so you have these 5,000 volunteers, which is running an army in of itself. I could only imagine your data, your logistics.
Yeah, it's nice because we put a lot in the hands of the churches. The churches bring the campus, they bring the leadership, they bring the volunteers, and they bring most of the funding.
Yes.
So it really makes it nice to have the churches as the venue and, to be able to serve the kids year round as well.
And you partner with other nonprofits. Let's talk a little bit about how you have built, your scaling piece by doing that. Because I know you have an event coming up in it, specifically focused that way.
Yeah, so a big part of what we do is we believe that what we do with godly excellence, and that's to get the families ready for back to school. But families need a lot more than that throughout the year, right? We don't want to just get them ready for back to school and say, hey, see you in 365 days, right? We want to pour into them year round. So that's called continuing hope. And how do we do that? One way is in-house. The churches can do things like a Thanksgiving dinner, a Christmas gift giving event. But a second way is through our community partners. So we have hundreds of community partners across the 2 counties that we serve. And these community partners are so valuable because they do what we don't do. Okay, we don't do after school tutoring. We don't do mental health counseling. We don't do pregnancy services, but they do, right? And our families need those services. So at a typical Day for Hope, we have a resource room where our community partners can come and they can share with the families what they do. So I use an example of a pregnancy center. They can do free pregnancy testing. They do free diapers for a year. They do free parenting classes. But then the event you talk about that we have coming up is a breakfast where we now host our community partners. They're now the spotlight. And the audience then is our churches. So we invite our churches to come and learn more about our community partners, because that same pregnancy service center needs the churches to understand that I can give away free diapers because I need diaper drives. I can do free parenting classes, but I need host sites for them. So we need to bring all of that together, and we feel like we're a great hub to do that because we're working with all these community partners anyway. So if we can give them better exposure to our churches, and it helps the churches because they don't have to figure out who they need to partner with. If they trust us, then they trust who we're referring, right? So
and that's a big thing, and I think that's a golden piece here. Is when you do any kind of business, whether it be a for-profit or a nonprofit, right? You're building a brand of trusted relationships.
Absolutely.
And you are that great liaison between the two sides, and that helps them collaborate and coordinate. And it's their collaboration, which is so vital and a benefit to the communities within the churches and the communities within these organizations. Pam, Hope for Community is a regional nonprofit. So let's talk about this for a second. So you're a regional nonprofit. You're located in Florida.
Yes.
Do you know other organizations nationally who's done things similar to you? I mean, you got into this caring for the homeless when you were in middle school in New York.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So as it comes around, goes around, do you coordinate, or do you have any networks in other areas in this country that some of our other listeners, can lean into, or what to look for, how to help?
Yeah. I don't know of any others that are doing to the extent and bandwidth that we are. When we first looked at this, that was a question, right? I went to our different organizations in town that serve homeless families and asked, is anyone doing this? The whole encompass picture of this. And nobody was. Now there are hundreds of organizations, probably thousands across the country, giving away backpacks. Okay. But to do everything, like a backpack is just such a small percent of what we do. I have not heard of anyone doing that. We are open to doing it in other counties as well as other states. We have one in the Carolinas that was a volunteer with us and looking to launch over there this summer. So that's exciting. But no, for us, it's just a matter of, it doesn't even have to be with us, like just serve kids, right? Like serve kids in need. My advice would be look for organizations that are serving families, serving children's in need, not only the homeless, but the poverty stricken that are one paycheck away from homelessness. Because if we can be on the preventive side, it's very important. But also look for, I like the small mom and pops, right? I like the small mom and pop nonprofits. I think from the experience I've seen is that they can serve so many with so little, right? And I think that's an important factor to look at as well.
I love that. If for our audience, if we can give them one little tip or piece of advice, one piece of awareness, you know, I think our country is flooded with homeless. I think we see, you know, as somebody who lives in New York City, we see it. I see it every day. On the other hand, what we don't see is we don't see the families. And I think that's I don't know if this is a good term or bad, but the hidden homeless, you know, and it's those children, if we could come together and make a difference for.
I agree 100%. Yeah. And that's really what broke my heart and became my holy discontent, is that children factored into the equation. Because from the age of 13 until 15 years ago, I never imagined children being part of that equation, right? I knew they were poverty stricken, but homeless, like that just like boggled my mind. So, and the thing I love about my job is I get to do things like this, right? I get to share what is actually happening out there, and that we have some answers. We're not the answer, but we can help, right? We can do our small piece to help. And it's interesting when I speak in our communities, you know, it's like mind-boggling to people that we have, you know, today we have just under 1,000 homeless children in Sarasota County and between 1,300 and 1,400 in Manatee County. And when I say those numbers, jaws drop, you know, and they're like, oh no, not in our county, or not in my child's school. And it's like, yes, in our county and in every single school. You know, one school may only have one or two, another school may have in the 20s or 30s, but it's so, and especially now, right? Post-COVID housing market, you know, houses are being sold for a lot more. So families are being booted out, or they can get higher rent. So families are being booted out. We have a large number of families living in cars right now, which is heartbreaking. And these kids still have to get up every morning and make sure their shoes are tied and their teeth are brushed and their homework's done and their permission slip is signed, and show up at school on time, and don't let your stomach growl and don't fall asleep at your desk, you know? So it's just really understanding that. I mean, ask the questions, you know, ask the questions, find out who your local McKinney Act agency is.
I think it's brilliant. So let's repeat that. Find out who your local McKinney Act agency is in your area if you want to see how you can get involved, how you can help make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Pam, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing the story and your dedication in your work for Hope for Community to Her Success Story. And, you know, anybody who's kind of hung with me for a while, our listeners, or know that I'm very much at the heart of that, our families need to be taken care of.
Yes.
We never know what's going on behind somebody's door, or their lack of. And if we can make a difference and we can help mothers be employed so they can take care of their children, parents be employed so they can take care of children, and give our children the edge in every form.
Absolutely.
You're doing good work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with our continuing hope, the last third piece is that we make it personal. And just the examples you just gave is exactly what we do, is trying to get to know the families on a personal level. And if they need help getting a job, can an active or retired professional come alongside them and say, I'm going to help you. I'm going to teach you how to write a resume and dress for success and do interviewing skills. So it's really about changing, you know, the direction the family's going in, right? It's more than just getting them ready for back to school. It has to be a life change for them.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you for stepping into the mission that was delivered to you and making this difference.
Thank you, Ivy. I really appreciate this opportunity.
And listeners, as I close the show, for those who are new to listening to her success story, and for those who have listened for a while, I thank you for that and know you know it's coming. At the end of every interview, I always suggest take a moment, take a breath. Write down one takeaway from today's interview. What was one thing that was meaningful to you? You could put it on a piece of paper. You could, if you keep notes on your phone, whatever your style is, it's always good. And then think about what is one action you can take that is important to you. Feel free to put that even just in our show notes. Feel free to reach out to myself, Ivy at Slater Success Coaching at any time. Let us know how you like this, how you like our nonprofit series. And if today was meaningful, share today's interview forward. Thank you again for joining us. See you next time.